Hello everyone and welcome back. So I wanted to go over a few shots and try to break down the elements and what's happening and the idea behind it. So as I was saying in the previous weeks, what I started with was actually this shot or this environment, and I wanted to render it from the front. But I realized after a couple of weeks that it's not feasible for what I can afford. It's really complex, and I dropped that idea. But I was able to salvage this shot from the top, and I wanted to break down what's happening here and what I was trying to convey and how I conveyed it. So my idea was that the collapse is going to happen behind this. So behind this, the spaceship, that's where it came from, and then the ground collapse happened on the right side. And to convey this, I tried to keep the colors of the shot very similar to the previous one, to feel that they are connected. Some of the elements are connected. This could have been done a lot better, obviously, if we kept the same colors of the lights, the fire, the save moment, and maybe added some of the lava into the other shot to create the connectivity for the viewer to and help them build the link. At the moment they feel a bit disconnected, but I tried my best with what I had to make them feel connected. So the first thing in this shot, in the beginning, this is the first frame, you see that there is a huge light here and a huge orange source. That's to mimic as if the crack happened behind it and it's still glowing super bright. So I wanted to show that. Maybe I should have reduced the intensity of this area a lot more to show that we're still living in that environment and the ground collapsing is the source of all of this, and then as it goes forward it's gonna lose that light because it's traveling away from it. So that's the first thing. The other thing that we have obviously is the fire coming from the cracks, so that's a language that we already used and it's gonna help connect. And because of time constraints, you will see that these cracks are actually, the fire is actually aligned nicely and there is sparks from them. So all of this are individual sims. But here on this side, you see the fire is not following the cracks because I didn't have time to run it. And I just mirrored, it took a couple of elements, shift them and place them. They were not, they don't make a lot of sense. But you can see the cracks here in this shot. So that's where the fire should have been coming from if I had time to do all this. Now, what else is missing from this shot is some kind of smoke sim inside the lava, and because the camera is moving this way, when I finished rendering, I realized that the lava movement is not working well because the camera and the lava are going against each other, and they basically they what's the word, they contradict each other, or they what's the word, I can't remember the word, they negate each other. So the movement of the camera, the movement of the lava, they negate that and it feels like it's static, but it's actually moving. And then there is a lot of smoke elements at the top layer. No, this smoke, all these elements are actually from the previous shot. It's actually the smoke elements of the spaceship rising from the ground, or the ground collapse, and I just took a couple of elements and I rotated them, scaled them, and tried to fill in everything in this area. Now the speed and all of that is gonna feel, it's not going to feel great because I've changed the scale quite a bit, but it gave me some elements to work with, so I didn't have to sim everything from scratch. And so this is what's happening in this shot. Now as for the fire here, what I've done is I've created a system that I work on one crack, I work on one source with this with the spark system and everything, and then I just run it across all of them. So I have one, and I have a switch. I have one setup and a switch system in the source. So I work on source number 0, and then overnight I say, okay, go run it for the other sources and make sure that everything is consistent. So when I come back the next day, everything is ready for me, and I had a system to grab them dynamically as well, so I don't have to do any work by hand. So when we have something like this, we have to design solutions that work efficiently. And if we were to take all this fragment and sim it at a higher resolution, it's not going to hold up at all, because we need a lot of resolution. Especially in the beginning, I was considering rendering it from close up, so it needs to hold up really well close to the camera, and then as well as other angles. So the elements needed to be really high res, the particles and all of that. So this is for this shot, and we're going to talk and cover the fire simulation, obviously in Houdini 18, and then and talk about a lot of other things related to creating these sims. But in this shot also, we have obviously a lot of fire and a lot of smoke. Now the smoke I was talking about here, everything that you see around the ship is actually these elements, except the fire. You know, all this moving smoke, I basically copied it a few times, used a time offset, and overlaid it on top just to give me something to work with. And for this shot, I have fire. So this is the fire element, and you can see that it gets born instantaneously. This is where the fire starts. So everything happens at once. And the only thing that I did was this, slow transition in comp, and we'll talk about that later. So that's the fire, and then we have sparks and we have smoke. So to be able to let's take a look at one more shot. This one, which is a close-up shot. And I wanted to show that the elements hold up really well for this shot as well. So in production, when you have something like this, you are probably going to have to sim individual elements, and you will be tweaking them per shot. I didn't do that because I wanted to have something that works across all shots, and I wanted to have enough detail and resolution. And there's a few things that I'd like to fix, obviously, in this, but it worked well in the other shots, so I was happy with it. I was happy with this result. Now, with this shot, you will see also that we have the same fire and the same sparks and the same smoke. And to my workflow, at least, I need to have plenty of resolution that allows me to go different, to get really close to the fire, as well as have nice details from far away. And that means we need to use a huge grid, which is not realistic. So what I end up doing is I need to divide my source into clusters. I need to divide it into smaller chunks, and this way I can work on one chunk and then repeat that process. Now the only downside of this is that you will lose some interactivity between these clusters. If we look here, we will lose some interactivity between these clusters, but if it's done efficiently, you won't see that problem. And a lot of studios, especially they do this a lot. I think some of their clusterings use smarter neighboring algorithm that allows them to interact, but if you do it correctly, you should be able to get a really nice result without having to sim, the huge domain. So here, the way I've split this is into 5, and this is the entire source, and I needed to get enough detail, so I split it into 4 like this. So this is one cluster, and I also deleted everything in the center. So the center part is removed, and then I have 4 emitters and then 1 at the center. The reason for that is I wanted to have extra control over the spaceship rising, okay? Because if I wanted, let's say if it was all together and the director comes back and say, hey, I want that smoke to be 2 times faster, or I want it to emit more smoke, I can just work on that cluster, and everything else surrounding it is going to be the same. So you need to think efficiently about, or you need to think of a smart way to split your source into individual chunks that once combined, they still give the illusion that they're all together. But this is 5 sims, 5 high-res sims for the smoke, and 4 high-res sims for the fire. The fire, I didn't want to have it in the center. Okay, I did that on purpose. I wanted to have everything around the spaceship be burning, but the spaceship itself, when it rises, is not. We don't have fire, and this is a personal decision. Okay, it has nothing to do with technical stuff. I just thought that it's gonna make things interesting, and what I was looking for is basically more interesting visual. I wanted to have a circle or a ring emitting fire, and then what's inside is like, I'm making composition basically, and then the inside of that circle is different. And with the fire being a source of light, it's gonna look cool illuminating everything else. If we had light source from the center, it's gonna be blown, it's gonna be very uniform, all red, all emitting light. So I wanted that breakup, and so I chose not to emit fire on the center and use this to help sell the visual. So you can see the fire here from close up. It's still holding up really well, and here as well it's glowing really well and looking interesting. So what we're going to do in terms of technical stuff, we're going to cover this because I think it's very once we fully understand how all of this works, then we can go and tackle whatever we need to tackle. And I'm still gonna talk about about my process and show you guys how many iterations I've gone through to get to where this is, because I'm not I don't have a concept art. You know, I don't have someone doing visual research by hand to tell me how much smoke I need, how big the fire is, how fast the fire moves, and you know, what kind of sourcing do we have, where is it coming from, how long is it lives, how high this flame is, and how dense the smoke is, and how the fire is going to work with the smoke. All these questions I don't have the answer for ahead of time. So I need to do a lot of visual research to find something well balanced that works. And I'm gonna show some of that stuff and then how I came to do this, because creating this by itself in terms of technical challenges is not that hard. The hard part is nailing down the visual that where everything works together. And hopefully I'm gonna give you guys enough ideas and information how that will help you in your own visual research when it comes to this. So let's get started.